In the case of the Turquoise Sun, we presented evidence that the prototypical sun of cosmogonic myth was the focus of intense electrical discharges in the form of heaven-spanning lightning and storms. We know this to be the case because ancient words for sun in widely disparate languages also denote lightning, storm, thunder god. Yet for one reason or another, comparative scholars have largely overlooked this evidence. Truth be told, the prototypical sun god and thunder god were one and the same celestial power, both tracing to a towering planet-based structure hovering in the northern circumpolar heavens. The Greek Zeus is the most familiar example of this archetypal celestial god, but analogous figures will be found around the globe. Ancient artworks complement the testimony from cosmogonic myth and linguistics. Early pictographs and cylinder seals depict a celestial body universally accepted as being the sun with lightning-like structures emanating across its face. Now consider the old Anatolian cylinder seal, wherein lightning-like spokes present a swastika-like form. The swastika, in fact, stands at the very nexus of the ancient imagery attached to the prototypical sun god and thunder god. How then are we to understand the original celestial reference behind the swastika? The swastika constitutes one of humankind's most archaic and enduring symbols, occurring on every inhabited continent. Swastikas appear in prehistoric contexts in Old Europe around 5000 BC, Neolithic China, Harappa India, and in the New World as well. Heinrich Schliemann, in his excavations of Troy, found hundreds of artifacts with swastikas on them. In the 19th century, scholars investigating the symbol's origin interpreted it as an astronomical image encoding the whirling rotation of the sun. At the same time, however, other scholars called attention to its intimate connection with the thunder god's fiery thunderbolt. Thor's thunderbolt, for example, was depicted alternately as a swastika or as a wheel-like object on ancient monuments and rock carvings, some dating to the Bronze Age. There are numerous instances where swastikas appear alongside so-called solar wheels. Witness the prehistoric ceramic artwork from Susa, wherein a swastika is placed immediately adjacent to a four-spoked sun. It is as if the ancient artists were trying to convey the impression that the two symbols were inherently related or variations upon a common theme. Miranda Green, in her standard work on Bronze Age sun worship, noted a fundamental affinity between the swastika and solar wheel. Quote, "What does the swastika as a symbol represent? It is, I think, a complex image and one with a close solar link. First and foremost, it would seem to represent rotary movement, and if in close association with the wheel, represents above all the rotating aspect of the sun. While a true wheel has spokes and a nave to reflect the circular beaming sun, the swastika reflects the movement of the orb across the sky." End of quote. Green's analysis of the ancient artworks is basically sound so far as it goes. There is an undeniable connection between the solar wheel and swastika, but it suffers from a seemingly fatal flaw, namely the readily observable fact that the present sun does not display wheel-like spokes or a swastika form as it moves across the sky. Yet as we documented in Turquoise Sun, the prototypical sun was routinely depicted with wheel-like spokes, typically 4 in number, the latter of which occasionally take on the form of a swastika. A perusal of ancient artworks will reveal an inherent connection between the swastika and whirling forms, the latter often depicted in the center of the field of vision. Indeed, numerous indigenous cultures identified the swastika as a whirling sun or as the whirling of the four winds linked to the four cardinal directions. A design from a prehistoric bowl from Samara offers an archaic example of this widespread thematic pattern from around 5000 BC. Here the swastika is set in the center of the design. The circumambulating fish contribute to and accentuate this impression of whirling and naturally suggest a counterclockwise rotation. It is obvious at once that the easiest way to produce such an image is by means of a stellar object at the circumpolar region, i.e. the very region associated with the polar configuration of planets reconstructed by Talbot and myself. In contrast, there is no conceivable way for the present sun to present the appearance of a revolving swastika. At this point, I would draw the reader's attention to the 4 dots that appear in the figure above. How are these dots to be explained by reference to the familiar sun? Significantly, 4 dots are also found together with the swastika in prehistoric artworks from around the globe. In his classic book on the symbol, Thomas Wilson wrote as follows, quote, "The swastika is sometimes represented with dots or points in the corners of the intersections," end of quote. The figure above offers a representative example. Here, too, it is impossible to explain this particular image by reference to the familiar solar orb, where 4 dots are nowhere to be found. Yet 4 dots are a regular feature in prehistoric exemplars of the so-called Lamat sign, discussed by us in several publications. The Lamat sign is archaic in nature, appearing already in pre-classic Mesoamerica. It was the presence of this glyph, together with the numbers 236, 90, 250, and 8 on pages 46 to 50 in the Dresden Codex, that led Ernst Forstmann and other early scholars to propose a connection between the glyph and Venus. Martha McCree emphasized the remarkable continuity of this image and its attendant symbolism across the millennia. Quote, "The Venus star logograph is depicted on portable objects from the pre-classic, classic, and post-classic periods into the 16th century. This continuity of an image that is graphically complex and semantically consistent is evidence not of the borrowing of a word or concept, but of the transmission of a specific image over an extensive geographic and temporal range." End of quote. The conventional explanation of the Lamat sign is that it offers an abstract reference to the phases of Venus. Susan Milbrath, an anthropologist specializing in ancient Mesoamerican astronomy, suggested that the glyph has reference to the 4 phases of Venus's appearance and disappearance. Quote, "The fact that there are 4 circles in a cross-shaped frame naturally suggests the 4 phases of Venus associated with the 4 different directions." End of quote. Yet this explanation is disproved by the fact that analogous images are to be found around the globe, often in a non-astronomical context where a sophisticated knowledge of the Venus cycle is difficult to imagine. So far as I'm aware, I'm the first scholar to call attention to Lamat-like forms outside of Mesoamerica. As a case in point, consider the Nutsi cylinder seal above. It too depicts a star surrounded by 4 dots. The resemblance between the Mesopotamian and Mesoamerican images is undeniable. Not only is there a centrally located 4-rayed star, but 4 circles or dots are placed in the interstices of the star exactly as in the Lamat sign. Not unlike the longevity of the Lamat glyph in Mesoamerican iconography, the quadripartite star symbol persisted for millennia in Mesopotamia. The symbolic importance of the stellar image is indicated by the fact that Babylonian kings had it depicted on their royal garments. How then are we to understand the unique design of the Lamat glyph? I discussed the Lamat in the Many Faces of Venus and other works, noting its possible relationship to the planet Venus. At the time, I was operating under the assumption that the image depicted a conjunction of Mars and Venus in which the red planet was positioned in front of the larger orb, but I had no idea how to explain the 4 smaller dots or satellites around the central star. Upon discussing the matter with Anthony Peratt in 2002, he pointed out that the dots in question are telltale signs of synchrotron radiation. According to Peratt, the only known mechanism that produces synchrotron radiation are electrons spiraling about a magnetic field at nearly the speed of light. Indeed, in high-energy discharge experiments conducted at Los Alamos Labs in the 1990s, Peratt himself had produced very similar images. In the image on the left, one finds a close analog to the classic Lamat sign, in which a central star is surrounded by 4 small circles. In the other figure, one finds a rosette-formed image not unlike that depicted in the case of the Turquoise Sun, wherein we argued that the prototypical sun presented the appearance of a 4-petaled flower at the time of creation. How interesting, then, to find that the Lamat sign was occasionally placed on the 4-petaled sun glyph in Mesoamerican monumental texts, evidently without changing the latter's meaning at all. I returned to the symbolism attached to Lamat in The Great Star, published in 2004, and once again reached out to Dr. Peratt for instruction in clarifying the various structures in question. In response, he wrote me as follows, quote, "Of course, this symbol is found all over the place. It is indeed Venus and Mars in front, but the quincunx is yet in front of Mars. See my Physica Scripta article that purposely does not show everything yet. Too early, and I'll have to find an alias to publish under." End of quote. Alas, Tony has yet to elaborate further on his groundbreaking experimental findings which help elucidate the astronomical imagery included in the ancient pictographs and hieroglyphs. One thing is certain, in the case of the Lamat sign, a pictograph is indeed worth 1,000 words. Indeed, it is our claim that the stellar image in question represents a veritable smoking gun pointing to an extraordinary and catastrophic planetary conjunction in relatively recent prehistory, likely during the Neolithic period. That argument stands until someone can demonstrate how 4 dots can appear around a stellar image in the present sky apart from Peratt's intense synchrotron radiation. It is important to underscore the profound implications of these findings. The mere fact that the swastika and Lamat signs depict celestial objects that are nowhere to be found in today's sky points to the conclusion that the ancient sky watchers were witness to a radically different celestial landscape. The conventional position holds that the ancient artworks discussed here are abstract or non-representational in nature. Miranda Green, for example, offered the following explanation of the various pictographs depicting the sun. Quote, "Man did not simply look at the sun and copy what he saw to the best of his ability. He went further and interpreted and superimposed new images of the sun which were not based entirely on his visual perception." End of quote. The gods themselves, according to this position, are simply human constructs that have no reference point in the natural world. Jan Assmann, the recently deceased dean of Egyptologists, emphasized the point, quote, "The deities and their actions, to whose reality human activity responds, are a cultural construct." End of quote. Richard Seifert, a world-renowned expert on ancient Greek religion, argued the point most forcefully, quote, "Greek deities are human constructions." End of quote. We would reject this entire line of reasoning, a philosophical trend which has done much to impede our understanding of ancient religion, myth, art, and the recent history of the solar system. Ancient gods such as Zeus, Thor, and Anna and Shamash were real and corresponded to colossal, awe-inspiring planet-based structures in the sky. The archaic artworks purporting to depict the stellar gods, such as the 4-spoked wheel, swastika, and Lamat forms discussed here, are representational in nature and accurately depict the prototypical sun participating in the polar configuration. An electrically charged sun which bears absolutely no relationship to the present sun. And that, my friends, is what the EU revolution is all about.